I'm going to need some help on this, and I'm going to get some serious good help right now. Sandra Smith, co-anchor of America Reports on Fox News.
So glad to be here.
Thank you, Sandra. As always,
I've been taking notes over here, Larry.
Let me just, I'm astonished that the Republicans were, this is like bait and switch. Schumer lured them in on a procedural vote, and bad enough that it was $75 billion in subsidies. Okay, that's, bad enough. We could discuss the chip situation. But then all of a sudden it went from $75 billion to $250 billion, which is where it was last spring when this thing first surfaced. $250 billion, not a nickel to pay for us. Does anybody want to stop federal spending in Washington or stop inflation? I ask you, Sandra Smith.
The question, do they want to, is a good one, because they should know how to by now. I'm buried in an editorial around me right now, bipartisan editorial, opinion pieces being written in the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and New York Post. It's not just spending. Biden's record regulations are driving inflation, too. Rich Lowry, across the world, environmentalists leave only misery in their wake. And the only people that are paying for this is the hardworking Americans, the middle class in this country. They're on the hook for this. More and more every day, I should add. I took notes yesterday. I heard you speak at a luncheon, Larry. Reward success, don't punish it. I followed up by reading a piece you suggested yesterday, Alicia Finley, in the Wall Street Journal, The High Cost of Free Money. She ends that piece with a really important but simple lesson. One lesson for Congress seems clear: never again send out cash with no strings attached. Why are there no lessons learned on any of this? And it's funny you started out. I'm sorry, I'm on a roll after listening to your riff, Larry. But Buttigieg, the transportation secretary inside of this White House, he comes out and he says in an interview on another network, and I rolled on this tape twice in my show today, he's astonished that people aren't making the transition to electric vehicles more quickly. He can't believe it. I pulled from our brain room today the average price of an electric vehicle right now, $67,000 and climbing, up 13% from just a year ago, and they're hard to come by. In some cases, you have to wait 8 months for delivery of one. Most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, 60% of them. Brand new Quinnipiac poll came out during our hours today. Brand new approval rating shows this president at an all-time low for his presidency. It can't get much worse, Larry.
28%.
But you left us off with some optimism yesterday. You said we know how to do this.
Right. I mentioned it. I can get out of this, but they're not doing it. And look at the Wall Street Journal in their editorial against these computer chip subsidies.
Right.
Okay. This is the conservative newspaper, conservative editorial page. I've been on it for, 40 years. I know them all. They're fabulous. They're blaming. It's bipartisan blame. We do not need industrial policy, corporate welfare. We do not need refundable tax credits for semiconductor companies. That means, by the way, you don't pay any taxes and the government writes a check, and somebody in the government chooses the winners and losers. That's nutty stuff.
That always works out.
Guess what? The pandemic emergency is over. Or didn't anybody look at that? Guess what? Chip prices, there was a Wall Street Journal news article, not editorial. Chip prices are falling. An inventory glut is developing. Demand is slipping. And they're pouring in $250 billion for Lord knows what or why. And it will increase inflation. It will not be paid for, not through growth. God forbid, tax hikes would be the dumbest thing in the world. I'm just saying they continue their bad habits. 16 Republicans, okay? 16 Republicans. They're the ones that disappoint me the most, Sandra, because they ought to know better. They ought to know better.
They ought to know better. And going back to, will they wake up to this? Do they know better? You know what's going to be really harsh is the way that this has been so tangible for the American people, and you've seen Democrats turning on Democrats, the White House is upset, there's turmoil within, is we've been paying for it in the form of inflation. You know what's next? And I'm sure you've seen a lot of the Wall Street notes coming out, and a lot of the economists are writing about this right now, is you're going to see a housing market that is going to go downhill pretty quickly. You had a lot of people getting
See the numbers today?
Big homes.
Existing home sales crashed.
Home sales.
New homes.
Home builder index.
Right.
Yes.
Single family starts, single family permits. Mortgage rates have almost doubled.
And then you've got Pantheon writing about a housing meltdown. This is the future of the housing market. They're saying it's going to be dire. I don't know how you don't notice mortgage applications dropping a couple percent within a week. People are walking away from these deals. The takeaway from all of that is people are nervous. They don't see leadership. They see answers and people not committing to them, but living by their political ideologies. That's a tough place for this country to be in right now.
Terrible place. There is a way out. There is a way out. Supply side, classical economic principles. We've gotten out of this mess before. We've cleaned it up and gotten it out before. We can do it again, but we're not doing it yet. But there is a way out. Freeze spending, make the Trump tax cuts permanent, particularly corporate tax cuts, deregulate everything, stop the war on fossil fuels.
Carter started it.
Carter
actually, he surprised us yesterday with that.
Didn't I say that? Did you love that? By the way, Jimmy Carter, and in cahoots with, nobody will get this.
What?
Senator Ted Kennedy.
Oh, right.
Kennedy, in those days,
yes,
the late 70s, was a deregulator. Particularly the transportation sector, trains, the Civil Aeronautics Board, and airplanes and so forth. And then Reagan was a deregulator. And then Bill Clinton was a welfare reformer with Newt Gingrich. So all I meant to say yesterday at the PAL lunch is there has been bipartisan support for sensible policies, but not today. Or maybe I should say there's bipartisan support today for too much darn
spending. You got to ask yourself, why is
that? Inflation.
Why are we in that place today? Why could we pull it off then and not today?
We had pretty strong leadership way back then. There's an old Irish guy from Hollywood, California, who pulled people together.
Your old boss.
But you know what? I will say this. Newt Gingrich, who was, like all of us, grew up during that period. Newt today believes there's a new American coalition possible, a common sense coalition that will have Republicans and independents and even maybe a third of the Democratic Party. So in some sense, Biden is going to help us create a new coalition and get rid of his crazy policies. But I want to make one more warning.
Sure.
The shrinkage of GDP. GDP is shrinking in the first half of this year, and it's because of inflation. The Fed tightening has not had any impact yet. That's still in front of us.
I heard you.
Be careful.
Okay, watching it.
Sandra Smith, the best of the best. You can get Sandra on America Reports, weekdays, every day, 1 p.m. Eastern, right here on Fox News.